the month of October, the spookiest month of them all. And what a way to celebrate the month of October than to go over some creepypastas. Creepypastas are essentially internet legends. They're creepy stories that have been posted online to the internet that really catch people's attention. And today I have picked 13 creepypastas that we will go over, starting from the least creepiest to the most creepiest. I would recommend you look at HoodoHoodlumsRevenge's video on creepypastas, this one right here, as I have been inspired to make this video because of it. So yeah, check out his video on creepypastas. Without further ado, let's get into them. Siren Head is a 12-meter tall, lanky humanoid creature with sirens for a head that was created by Canadian artist Trevor Henderson. If you're ever in a dark forest and you hear some sirens going off, run, because that, more than likely, is Siren Head. Not only can Siren Head play actual siren and alarm noises, but he can even mimic other noises, such as human voices and animal voices. He uses this to lure his victims. Siren Head isn't man-made. He isn't even a being of our reality. He is much different from us, and is not limited by our laws of nature. He is a constantly changing manifestation. It is not known how Siren Head came to have the features he has, such as his infamous sirens. All we know is that he is a creature that you must avoid if you hear him. Slender Man is a tall humanoid creature, generally wearing a black or gray suit, with a white shirt and a tie, with a white pale face devoid of any human features, that appears out of seemingly nowhere. He tends to stalk his victims. He tends to torment them by repeatedly appearing and vanishing without harming the victim, almost teasing them and playing around with them, in a way. He can appear inside your home, outside your home, and even on certain roads and paths that one might travel, like for example, on your way to work, on your way to school, etc. He stalks his victims until they eventually lose their mind. Cartoon Cat is an urban legend also created by Canadian horror artist Trevor Henderson. He is a giant cat that kind of looks like a 30s cartoon cat. He is very similar to Slender Man in the way that he likes to stalk people, especially inside of their houses. He is also a shapeshifter, and he can defy the laws of physics like a cartoon cat would typically do. He likes to stalk his victims and make them go crazy. Always watch out for Cartoon Cat, because he might one day do some horrible atrocities on you. Jeff was just your average 13-year-old boy. He had recently moved into a new neighborhood with his brother and their parents. But things took a sour turn when Jeff experienced bullying. He was disfigured after being set on fire while fighting the gang of bullies, and he eventually ended up losing his sanity because his face was completely burnt. Because of this, Jeff went on a killing rampage, including killing his parents. He went on a killing rampage against those who refused to sleep at night. And Jeff later became known as Jeff the Killer. SCP-173, also known as the Sculpture, is probably the most infamous SCP in the SCP universe. SCP-173 is a sculpture constructed out of concrete. It is capable of moving at high speeds and will kill the victim by either snapping at the base of the skull or strangulating them to death. However, SCP-173 only moves towards your direction to harm you when you are looking away from it. It has a sort of weeping angels gimmick to it. If you look at SCP-173, it will not move towards your general direction. Only when you look away will it come to kill you. To defeat SCP-173, you have to look directly at it and walk away slowly but surely until SCP-173 is a safe distance away from you. Always make sure to check your surroundings at all times. Lavender Town Syndrome refers to the increase in suicides in young children after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan in the year 1996. In Pokemon Red and Green, there was this area called Lavender Town, which was supposed to be a spooky ghost town. Now, the music for the area of Lavender Town was very creepy, and it was what was causing all the suicides to happen. Certain frequencies in the music were just really unpleasant to the ears, and would cause mass illness and hysteria amongst young children. I will play you a part of the music. Listen with caution. Squidward's suicide starts off with a story. It talks about a man who was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios. Him and two other interns that were in the editing room, alongside the lead animators and sound editors, received a copy that was supposed to be of the SpongeBob episode Fear of a Krabby Patty. But it turns out that something was off. Instead of the title screen reading Fear of a Krabby Patty, it read Squidward's suicide. At first, the interns played it off as a joke, so they watched through it. At first, it was just a normal SpongeBob episode. Nothing off was playing about it. The story begins with Squidward practicing his clarinet, and of course, he isn't doing a very good job at it. We then hear SpongeBob laughing outside of Squidward's house. Squidward stops playing and then yells at him. It turns out that Squidward actually has an upcoming concert to go to that he's going to perform at. While he is playing, Squidward is not putting on his usual performance. Things aren't going well at the concert. There's a slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to straight up boo him. It then shows Squidward in full frame, and he looks very afraid. It then cuts to a shot of SpongeBob also booing Squidward. Everybody seemed to have hyper-realistic bloodshot eyes. Very detailed, in fact. The shot then goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very depressed. At that point, there was literally no sound. Nothing. It was just blank silence. He sat there blinking in the silence for about 30 seconds. He then started to sob softly. He then put his hands over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute more, all while a sound in the background was very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. His sobbing starts to get louder. It seemed like he was getting more and more sadder and angrier. Sobbing sounded almost real, like as if this was somebody that was actually in pain. Then, hyper-realistic blood started running down Squidward's face. The screen started twisting and showing really bizarre things, including a photo of what appeared to be a dead child. Squidward, at that point, was just staring at the viewer, full frame of the face, for about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out, and a deep voice said, "Do it." And then, we seen Squidward hands a shotgun, puts the gun to his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him and his bed, and he flies back with force. The last 5 seconds of the episode show his body on the bed, on his side, one eye dangling on what's left of his head above the floor, staring blankly at it. And the episode ends. This one talks about a group of people exploring this abandoned residence when they come across this hatch. Now, nothing weird is apparent at first. However, as they open this hatch, this weird voice says, "I have a body of a pig." And then a grunt proceeds afterwards. Now, this video doesn't seem that strange or bizarre or scary, but the photo itself is what really sets the tone. Smile Dog is a photo of a demonic-looking dog that is meant to drive you into insanity. Smile Dog is located in a JPEG by the name of smile.jpg. If you receive an email with this JPEG, your task will be to spread the word by forwarding the email to other people, or else Smile Dog will appear in your dreams and turn them into nightmares. If you do not send the picture within 3 days, the picture will deform and mutate into something much worse. What's interesting about Smile Dog is that upon coming across this image, it might give you a sort of fear of this appearing in your nightmares, which causes you to think about the image more, which increases the likelihood of you having nightmares, which then causes you to think of the image even more, which then allows the image to be spread across the internet in a self-replicating manner. So maybe Smile Dog is a real demon after all. Suicide Mouse is a video of Mickey Mouse walking through what seems to be an abandoned city. There seems to be no presence of life here. The video is 9 minutes long. It first starts off with some weird piano music, and then it cuts to silent until we can start to hear some hyper-realistic screams going on in the background. It eventually ends with Mickey Mouse killing himself and the devil himself appearing. People who watch this video till the end have a higher likelihood of killing themselves afterwards. Let me show you the video. In 1971, a scientist by the name of Zimmerman was very interested in the supernatural. He wanted to prove the existence of the supernatural. Now, it just so happened that he had a deep underground lab in Alaska. He brought in 15 people for the experiment to test whether the supernatural was real or not. Fast forward a couple of years, in 1987, the experiment was ready to be done. 3 test subjects got sealed in 3 separate cells with cameras monitoring each one. On the PA, Zimmerman started saying a chant that was meant to summon supernatural entities. After the chant, people in the chamber started feeling dread, and then, strangely enough, the cameras all turned to static. The next day, one of the test subjects came into the main office. One of the 3 cameras started functioning, and it showed a photo of one of the test subjects dead. Then, out of nowhere, one of the other camera's images returned as well, and the humanoid figurine with large piercing eyes was staring point blank at the camera. Zimmerman ordered people to open the last cell. When they opened the last cell, another creature emerged and killed guards, but then got killed by the guards. And then out of nowhere, living in the sunlight started blasting in the main office. The power went out, and the cell with the creature on the cameras was now empty. The creature appeared in the office and killed Zimmerman, then went on a killing rampage. The test subject who came into the main office ran towards the exit and closed the underground lab. He continues to tell this story to people because he hears living in the sunlight outside of his house. The creature has now found him. This is the story of a man named Zach who gets his hands on a cartridge of the 1988 game Godzilla Monster of Monsters for the NES. He starts up the game for the first time. Very excitedly, he hops into a level. He's playing through the game and things are going fine. He then starts to notice that certain creatures in the game were not in the original game, which is kind of weird. It's almost as if he was playing a sort of prototype of the game. A lot of weird things were happening while he was playing the game. For example, while he was fighting Godzilla, one of the bosses in the game, a weird glitchy note appeared at the end, seemingly out of nowhere, which is not supposed to happen. Zach then loaded into Pathos, the next area. But what was weird about Pathos was that there were no enemies at all, not even any obstacles, which is so weird. Normally, there was meant to be enemies, but here, there was none. But then, eventually speaking, Zach got to this place with a hellish background, fire and brimstone covering the floor, and there was a text up top saying run. So Zach did run, and then out of nowhere it appeared. Red showed up. Now, this was not meant to be in the game. It was truly something out of this world. Now, this creepypasta is very long. Because of that, I will leave a link in the description to the rest of the creepypasta. Finish it if you dare. During the 1940s, Russian researchers kept 5 people for experimenting. These 5 test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. They kept these people in chambers, and they experimented on their sleep schedule. The purpose of this experiment was to keep 5 people awake, alive, for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. For the first 5 days, things were fine. The subjects didn't complain. Sure, maybe their conversations had gotten a little darker in between them, but for the most part, everything was fine. However, after the 5th day, the test subjects started to complain about their circumstances, and they started to demonstrate severe paranoia. After 9 days of not having sleep, one of them started to scream at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. Then, a second captive started screaming. After 3 more days, there was no more noise coming from the chambers. But nothing happened. No noises were being made. So, to try and convince them to make noise, they announced on the speakers, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." And what they got back shocked them. In a calm voice, one of them responded, "We no longer want to be freed." This shocked the researchers. The chamber was flushed of the gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately the subjects started to complain. They wanted the gas back. Eventually speaking, the chambers were finally opened, and the scientists rushed in, and what they saw shocked them. They found that 4 out of the 5 subjects were indeed alive, but their flesh had been completely destroyed and torn, more than likely through self-infliction. The abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage. The Russian scientists tried to remove the test subjects from the chamber, but they fought back, and one of the soldiers even died from having his throat ripped out by one of them. They wanted to stay in that chamber. They wanted the gas that kept them awake. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. 3 living test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. The 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. They eventually did surgery on the subjects, and then they put the subjects back to experiment with them more. They put them back on the gas. But then one of them flatlined and died. It was enough. It was all the suffering that he could take. The gas was just too much. Then the commander in charge of the experiments gave the order to seal the chamber with both of the remaining subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the 3 researchers immediately drew his gun and shot the commander right between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well, to free them. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you," he screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The subject then flatlined as he weakly choked out, "So nearly free." And those were his last words. And that's it when it comes to creepypastas. I had a lot of fun making this video. It was really entertaining for me. I like to delve into spooky things, as it is really cool to explore what makes us scared and what doesn't. I want to wish everybody a happy Halloween. Stay safe, and make sure that there aren't any AK-47s hiding in your candy.